The stars had always whispered humanity's name. Not because humans were the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not. Not because they possessed the greatest technology. They did not. And certainly not because they were peaceful. The galaxy feared humanity for one reason alone. Humans refused to surrender. For 300 years, the United Galactic Council observed Earth from afar. They watched humanity survive world wars, collapsing economies, climate disasters, pandemics, and near extinction. Any other species would have broken long ago. Humans adapted instead. That frightened the galaxy more than weapons ever could. Inside the floating chambers of the Council Citadel, representatives from thousands of civilizations gathered beneath artificial suns. Massive alien forms filled the chamber, towering insectoid generals, crystalline hive minds, machine diplomats glowing with cold intelligence. At the center stood High Chancellor Vaylor. His voice echoed like thunder. Humanity is a destabilizing species. The chamber remained silent. Vaylor continued. Where humans go, rebellion follows. Their ideas infect weaker systems. Their persistence has inspired uprisings across 17 sectors. Their emotions override logic. Their survival instincts border on insanity. A giant hologram of Earth rotated above the chamber. Blue oceans. White clouds. One tiny world. One dangerous world. The Council has reached a final conclusion, Vaylor declared. Humanity is hereby banned from galactic civilization. Shockwaves spread through the chamber. Not exterminated. Not conquered. Erased. Every human ship would be denied entry into galactic spaceports. Human trade routes would be destroyed. Communication with Earth would become illegal. Any species assisting humans would face annihilation. The galaxy believed isolation would slowly kill humanity. And for a moment, it seemed they were right. On Earth, panic spread within hours. Galactic gates closed. Orbital stations went dark. Trade systems collapsed overnight. Colonies on distant worlds lost contact with Earth completely. Billions screamed at the sky. Human ambassadors begged the Council for mercy. There was none. Within months, food shortages consumed the outer colonies. Entire governments collapsed. Riots burned through megacities from New Tokyo to the Atlantic arcologies. News channels repeated the same horrifying message every day. Humanity stand alone. But the Council misunderstood one critical thing about humans. Isolation had never weakened them before. It had sharpened them. Deep beneath the ruined mountains of Nevada, hidden military scientists activated a classified protocol sealed for over a century. Project Ashes. If humanity could not join the galaxy, they would outgrow it. Admiral Elias Kane stared at the holographic stars before him. Scars crossed his weathered face like old battle lines. A young officer spoke nervously. Sir, the Council expects us to collapse within 20 years. Kane's eyes hardened. Good. The officer blinked. Kane turned toward the massive hidden fleet being assembled in darkness. Warships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Let them believe humanity is dying, he whispered. His voice became colder. When we return, the stars themselves seem to tremble. They'll beg us for mercy. And far beyond Earth, across the silent galaxy, no one realized they had just made the greatest mistake in cosmic history. The galaxy celebrated humanity's downfall. Across thousands of worlds, citizens gathered in glowing cities to watch the official broadcast from the United Galactic Council. Alien commentators laughed as human trade networks collapsed sector by sector. The human era is over, one announcer declared proudly. The galaxy is finally safe. But hidden beneath Earth's surface, humanity was becoming something far more dangerous. Project Ashes was never meant to exist. Even most human governments had believed it was a myth, a forbidden contingency created after humanity's first contact with alien civilizations nearly 2 centuries earlier. The project's purpose was terrifyingly simple. If the galaxy ever turned against humanity, humans would disappear and evolve in secret. Deep underground, colossal facilities awakened after decades of silence. Ancient blast doors opened for the first time in generations. Automated factories lit up like artificial suns. Millions of dormant machines came online simultaneously. Entire mountains trembled. In the Nevada underground complex, Admiral Elias Kane walked through endless halls filled with scientists, engineers, and soldiers. Massive holograms displayed ship schematics unlike anything known to the Council. These were not elegant alien vessels, designed for diplomacy. These were predators. Human ships were ugly, brutal, functional. Every surface existed for survival and war. Dr. Celine Ward, head of military engineering, stood beside a towering holographic blueprint nearly 5 kilometers long. "The first Eclipse-class dreadnought is ahead of schedule," she said. Kane studied the design carefully. The ship looked monstrous. Black armor layers, gravity-driven rail cannons, experimental reactors pulsing like giant mechanical hearts. "Can it survive direct plasma bombardment?" Kane asked. Celine smiled faintly. "Sir, it survived a simulated star core eruption." Even Kane looked impressed. Humanity had stopped building for peace long ago. Now they were building to endure extinction. Meanwhile, life on the surface worsened. Without alien trade, Earth's economy collapsed completely. Entire nations merged into survival coalitions. Millions starved. Energy shortages plunged megacities into darkness. And still, humanity refused to die. In fact, suffering began uniting them. For the first time in history, old rivalries started disappearing. Nations that once hated each other now shared resources. Former enemies fought side by side to rebuild shattered infrastructure. The galaxy expected chaos. Instead, humans adapted again. That terrified the Council's intelligence divisions. Inside the Citadel, Chancellor Vaylor received increasingly disturbing reports. Human resistance movements are growing stronger. An advisor warned. "Impossible," Vaylor snapped. "Their economy is destroyed." "Yes, Chancellor, but their military production has mysteriously increased by 400%. The chamber fell silent. Vaylor's expression darkened. "How?" "No one knows." That was the truth. Because the galaxy had never learned humanity's oldest secret. Humans became strongest when cornered. Years passed. Then decades. Gradually, the galaxy stopped thinking about Earth altogether. Humanity became a cautionary tale told in schools. "Obey the Council," teachers warned young students, "or you will vanish like the humans." But beyond the forbidden Sol system, something was moving in darkness. Hidden shipyards orbited dead moons. Asteroid belts had been hollowed into weapons factories. Entire fleets drifted silently between stars, without activating communications once. Humanity had vanished from the galaxy, exactly as planned. Then one day, a remote Council listening station near the edge of known space detected an unidentified transmission. Only 4 words. Cold, calm, terrifying. Humanity remembers everything. Seconds later, the station disappeared. No debris, no survivors, nothing. And for the first time in decades, fear returned to the galaxy. The destruction of listening station Kappa 9 should have been impossible. The station was protected by automated defense grids, cloaking satellites, and a military fleet powerful enough to destroy small planets. Yet in less than 30 seconds, every signal from the station vanished. No distress call, no battle report, only silence. Inside the United Galactic Council Citadel, panic spread rapidly through the intelligence divisions. Massive holographic maps flickered across the chamber as analysts searched desperately for answers. "We found no energy signatures," one officer said nervously. "No warp trails. None. No surviving debris? Nothing, Chancellor." High Chancellor Vaylor tightened his claws against the armrest of his throne. That disturbed him more than open war. It meant humanity had learned how to strike without being seen. A military commander stepped forward. Perhaps pirates. Vaylor slammed his staff against the floor. Pirates do not erase entire battle stations. The chamber fell silent instantly. Then another officer spoke carefully. "There is one more thing." A transmission appeared above the chamber. For words burned across the hologram like fire. Humanity remembers everything. Some council members visibly trembled. Humans were not supposed to return. They were supposed to fade into history, weakened by isolation and internal collapse. That had been the entire purpose of the banishment. Instead, something had survived. Something patient. Something angry. Far beyond council territory. Hidden near the black voids outside map space. Admiral Elias Kane stood aboard the flagship Nightfall. The bridge was silent except for the low hum of engines, powerful enough to bend gravity itself. The ship looked less like a vessel and more like a moving fortress. Dark armored walls, massive rail cannons stretching for kilometers, fighter bays filled with sleek attack craft, designed for one purpose only: annihilation. A young officer approached Kane carefully. "Sir, the Council has increased patrols near Sector 12. Kane nodded slowly. "Good." The officer hesitated. "Permission to speak freely?" Kane looked at him. "Granted. Why reveal ourselves now? We've spent decades hidden. We could remain invisible." Kane turned toward the stars outside the massive observation glass. His reflection stared back like a ghost. "Because hiding was never the goal," he said quietly. "It was preparation." Across hidden human territories, thousands of warships awakened simultaneously. Shipyards that had remained dark for decades suddenly blazed with activity. Colonies long believed dead reactivated their communications. Humanity had spent 40 years rebuilding in silence. 40 years evolving. Their technology no longer resembled anything the galaxy understood. Alien civilizations designed ships for efficiency. Humans designed them for survival. Council plasma weapons? Human armor adapted mid-battle. Electronic warfare? Human systems operated without centralized networks. EMP attacks? Human vessels could function mechanically if necessary. Every weakness the galaxy once exploited had been erased. And humans had done something even more terrifying. They had studied alien warfare. Every battle, every strategy, every weakness. Humanity had transformed itself into the perfect enemy. Then the attacks began. One by one, remote Council outposts vanished. Military convoys disappeared without warning. Prison worlds lost contact. Supply chains collapsed across entire sectors. Witnesses described impossible things. Black ships emerging from darkness, without scanners detecting them. Enemy fleets destroyed before firing a single shot. Human soldiers surviving wounds that should have killed them. Whispers spread rapidly across the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet has returned. For ordinary citizens, fear became obsession. Parents told children to stay indoors during spaceport alarms. Merchants abandoned trade routes near former human territories. Even Council admirals began refusing assignments near Sol space. But the most horrifying moment came 3 weeks later. A massive human fleet suddenly appeared near the heavily fortified planet Verex Prime. Thousands of ships, perfectly silent. Council defenses immediately activated. Weapons locked. Fleets mobilized. Then humanity transmitted a single message to the entire galaxy. Admiral Kane himself appeared on every screen. Older now. Harder. His eyes carried the weight of 40 years of hatred. "You isolated humanity," he said calmly. "You thought suffering would break us." Behind him, endless warships filled the stars. Kane's expression became colder. "But suffering only taught us how to fight monsters." Then the transmission ended, and the war for the galaxy officially began. The galaxy had witnessed wars before. Civil wars, machine rebellions, planetary exterminations. Entire star systems burned throughout history. But nothing compared to what happened above Verex Prime. The planet itself was considered untouchable, protected by 3 defense moons, 20 orbital weapon rings, and the 9th Galactic Armada. Verex Prime was the Council's greatest military fortress outside the Citadel itself. Its commanders believed no force in existence could breach its defenses. Then humanity arrived. Thousands of black warships floated silently beyond the planet's outer orbit, like predators, surrounding wounded prey. Unlike alien fleets that moved in organized formations, human ships drifted unpredictably, chaotic, aggressive, alive. Inside the Verex Prime Command Center, alarms screamed across every console. Enemy fleet count confirmed. "How many?" General Torvac demanded. The officer swallowed hard. We can't calculate accurately." Torvac's massive armored face twisted with disbelief. "What does that mean?" "It means their fleet is too large." Silence consumed the room. For the first time in decades, fear appeared in the eyes of experienced Council officers. Then the humans moved. Without warning, Enormous sections of space distorted violently. Gravity itself bent around the lead human ships as experimental engines activated. Council scanners malfunctioned instantly. One technician shouted in panic, "Our targeting systems are failing." Why? They're jamming spacetime itself. Before Torvac could respond, the first human rail cannon fired. The weapon didn't glow like plasma technology. It didn't charge dramatically. It simply unleashed a metal projectile at near-light speed. 1 second later, an entire Council destroyer exploded into molten debris. Then another, and another. Human ships fired relentlessly. The battlefield transformed into chaos. Council plasma cannons blasted toward the Black Fleet, but human armor adapted mid-impact, dispersing energy across layered magnetic plating. Fighters launched from hidden bays beneath human dreadnoughts, swarming enemy vessels like furious insects. They fought differently. Alien militaries relied on logic and coordination. Humans relied on aggression. A Council captain watched in horror as a damaged human cruiser rammed directly into a battleship instead of retreating. The collision destroyed both vessels, but the humans never hesitated. "They're insane," someone whispered. No, they were determined. On board the flagship Nightfall, Admiral Elias Kane stood calmly while explosions shook the bridge. "Tactical report," he ordered. "Outer defense ring destroyed. Enemy casualties. Severe. And ours." The officer paused. "Also severe, sir." Kane nodded once. No emotion. Every human aboard understood the truth already. Humanity wasn't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to make the galaxy remember them forever. Meanwhile, deep below Varix Prime's surface, civilians crowded into emergency shelters. Families huddled together as the planet trembled from orbital bombardments. Children cried. Parents prayed. And for the first time, ordinary galactic citizens began asking a terrifying question. Did the Council create this war? Because humanity had not attacked innocent worlds first. The Council had isolated them, starved them, erased them. Now the consequences had returned. Above the planet, the battle worsened. Human boarding pods smashed through Council hulls like bullets. Soldiers in black combat armor stormed enemy ships with terrifying efficiency. Helmet cameras, later recovered from Council Marines, showed horrifying scenes. Humans continuing to fight after critical injuries. Entire squads sacrificing themselves just to disable one reactor. Soldiers charging through fire without retreating. Not because they lacked fear, because they had learned to weaponize it. Then came the moment that changed the galaxy forever. A massive human dreadnought emerged from hyperspace directly above Varix Prime, bigger than anything ever built by the Council. The Oblivion. Its main cannon slowly charged, while every ship nearby tried desperately to escape. General Torvac stared at the screen in disbelief. That weapon impossible. Admiral Kane's voice echoed across all frequencies. You wanted humanity gone. The cannon glowed brighter than a dying star. Now witness what your fear created. The weapon fired, and the sky of Varix Prime split open. The beam from the Oblivion tore through space like the wrath of a god. For one horrifying second, the heavens above Varix Prime became pure white light. Then the defense moon vanished. Not damaged, not shattered, gone. A structure that had taken 2 centuries to build disappeared instantly, erased so completely that even its debris turned to glowing dust. Shockwaves rolled across orbit. Council ships spun helplessly through collapsing gravitational fields, while alarms screamed across every channel. Inside the command center, General Torvac could barely breathe. How powerful is that weapon? No one answered, because nobody knew. Humanity had hidden for 40 years, and now the galaxy was seeing the results. Outside the shattered defense lines, the Black Fleet advanced slowly through burning debris. Human warships moved with terrifying confidence, their dark hulls illuminated by explosions all around them, like demons walking through fire. On the surface of Varix Prime, civilians flooded the streets in panic. Emergency sirens echoed endlessly across towering cities, while evacuation transports overloaded within minutes. The Council had promised safety. Now entire continents watched the sky burn. A little girl stood beside her mother near an evacuation terminal, staring upward as flaming wreckage fell from orbit like meteors. "Mom," she whispered fearfully, "are the humans monsters?" Her mother could not answer, because deep inside, even she wasn't sure anymore. Meanwhile, aboard the Nightfall, Admiral Elias Kane observed the battlefield in silence. One officer approached cautiously. "Sir, enemy surrender requests are increasing." Kane didn't react. "Military or civilian?" "Both." Another officer spoke carefully. "Some council systems are broadcasting anti-war protests. Citizens are blaming the council for provoking humanity." That finally caught Kane's attention. Interesting. The galaxy was beginning to understand the truth. Humanity had not started this war. They had endured humiliation, starvation, and isolation for decades before striking back. And now fear was spreading faster than the battle itself. Across thousands of worlds, people watched live broadcasts from Verex Prime in horror. They expected savage barbarians. Instead, they saw disciplined fleets, organized strategy, and terrifying technological superiority. The humans weren't fighting like desperate survivors. They were fighting like an empire reborn, and that realization terrified the Council more than any weapon. Inside the Citadel, Chancellor Vaylor slammed both fists onto the Council platform. "We will not negotiate with them." His voice thundered through the chamber. But unlike before, many representatives no longer looked certain. One diplomat stood slowly. "With respect, Chancellor, perhaps humanity deserves reparations." Vaylor turned furiously. "Reparations?" Another representative joined in. "We isolated an entire species. Millions died during the embargoes. They were dangerous." Vaylor shouted. "And now they are far more dangerous." The diplomat replied coldly. Silence followed, because everyone knew it was true. The Council had tried to control humanity through fear. Instead, they had forged humanity into something unstoppable. Back above Verex Prime, the battle entered its final stage. The remaining Council fleet gathered near the planet in a desperate defensive formation. Thousands of warships aligned together beneath the burning remains of orbital stations. General Torvak opened a direct transmission to Admiral Kane. The human commander appeared instantly on screen. Calm, unshaken. Torvak swallowed his pride. "What do you want?" Kane stared at him for several seconds before answering. "Justice. You're destroying entire worlds." Kane's eyes hardened. "You destroyed ours first." Torvak tried again. "If this continues, billions will die." For the first time, emotion appeared in Kane's face. Pain. Old pain. Billions of humans already did. Then the transmission ended. Moments later, every human ship accelerated forward simultaneously. The final assault had begun, and the galaxy was about to witness why banning humanity became the greatest mistake in history. The final assault on Verex Prime lasted only 18 minutes. 18 minutes to destroy the most powerful defense fleet in the galaxy. 18 minutes to break the illusion that the United Galactic Council was unbeatable. When the battle finally ended, the stars above Verex Prime were filled with drifting wreckage and burning metal. Entire fleets floated lifelessly through orbit like graveyards abandoned by time itself. And at the center of it all, the human fleet stood untouched. Across the galaxy, fear turned into panic. Emergency broadcasts interrupted every civilian network. Markets collapsed. Border worlds declared independence from the Council overnight. Some species even began offering public apologies to humanity, terrified they might become the next target. The galaxy was no longer asking if humans could win. They were asking how far humans were willing to go. And that question frightened even Admiral Elias Kane, because deep beneath the surface of Mars, humanity had built something terrible, something Kane himself once tried to destroy. Project Helios. Only 7 people in existence knew the truth about it. It was not a ship, not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a system designed to weaponize stars. Dr. Celine Ward stood inside the massive underground chamber, staring at the colossal machine suspended above a reactor core. Rings of energy rotated around it slowly, casting crimson light across the facility walls. A young scientist spoke nervously. "The prototype is stable." Celine didn't look convinced. "Stable enough to activate?" The scientist hesitated. "Maybe." That was the problem. Helios was beyond experimental. Human scientists had discovered a horrifying possibility during their years in exile. Stars could be destabilized artificially. With enough precision, an entire solar system could be erased without deploying a single fleet. One activation, one dead star, billions gone instantly. Humanity created the weapon as a deterrent. But now the war was escalating faster than anyone predicted. An alarm suddenly echoed through the facility. Celine activated her communicator immediately. Kane, the Admiral's voice answered through static. The Council is mobilizing towards Seoul. Celine froze. How many? Everything they have left. Her blood ran cold. The Council wasn't surrendering. They were preparing extermination. For the first time since the war began, fear appeared inside the human command structure. Massive enemy fleets were converging from every remaining core world. Ancient warships hidden for centuries were being reactivated. The galaxy had finally realized the truth. If humanity survived this war, the Council would never control the stars again. Inside the Citadel, Chancellor Vaylor addressed the remaining loyal systems. Humanity cannot be reasoned with, he declared. They seek domination through terror. Some believed him, others no longer did. But fear pushed the galaxy forward anyway. Thousands of fleets united under one final command. Destroy Earth. Destroy Mars. Destroy humanity forever. Meanwhile, aboard the Nightfall, Admiral Kane watched tactical displays fill with red enemy markers. One officer spoke quietly. Sir, we are outnumbered 9-1. Another added, even with our technology, we cannot stop this many fleets. Silence covered the bridge. Then Kane asked the question nobody wanted to hear. How long until Helios is operational? The bridge officers exchanged nervous looks. 3 hours. Kane closed his eyes briefly. 3 hours. If the Council reached Seoul before then, humanity could lose everything. But if Helios activated, entire civilizations could vanish. Kane looked out at the stars again. 40 years ago, humanity only wanted acceptance. Now they possessed the power to burn galaxies. And somewhere deep inside, Kane wondered whether humanity had already crossed the line between survivor and monster. Then emergency alarms exploded across the bridge. Sir, a terrified officer pointed toward the scanners. Something massive had appeared near the edge of the Sol system. Not one fleet. Hundreds. The Council's final armada had arrived. And at its center, the Citadel itself. The arrival of the Citadel changed everything. Even among the countless wonders of the galaxy, the Citadel was legendary. A colossal artificial world drifting through space, larger than some moons, protected by layers of shields powerful enough to survive supernovas. For centuries, it had been the heart of galactic authority. Untouchable, unbreakable. Now it floated at the edge of the Sol system, surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in history. Thousands upon thousands of warships filled the darkness, like a metal storm stretching across the stars. Human officers aboard the Nightfall stared at tactical screens in silence. One whispered the thought none of them wanted to say aloud. This is the end. Admiral Elias Kane remained motionless. But even he understood the danger. The Council had sacrificed everything for this battle. Entire sectors had been stripped of defenses just to create this final fleet. Ancient weapons platforms, forbidden technologies, planetary siege cannons. All of it now pointed toward humanity. Either the Council would die today, or humans would. Inside the Citadel, Chancellor Vaylor stood before millions of live viewers across the galaxy. Behind him, the enormous Council banners hung proudly despite the chaos consuming the stars. Citizens of the galaxy, he declared, today we end the human threat forever. Thunderous applause echoed through the massive chamber. But not everyone joined in. Some representatives looked terrified. Others looked ashamed. Because deep down, many now understood the horrifying truth. Humanity had become dangerous because the galaxy made them dangerous. Still, it was too late to turn back now. The fleets advanced. Near Mars orbit, the first wave of Council ships unleashed a barrage powerful enough to light entire regions of space blue-white. Millions of plasma rounds tore toward the human defensive line. Then humanity answered. Black warships surged forward directly into enemy fire. Rail cannons thundered. Missiles screamed across vacuum. Fighter swarms collided like violent storms between exploding capital ships. The battle became absolute chaos instantly. Entire fleets vanished in nuclear fire. Ships rammed each other intentionally. Broken vessels kept firing even while splitting apart. It no longer resembled warfare. It resembled extinction. On Mars, deep beneath the surface, Dr. Celine Ward watched the Helios system nearing activation. Energy levels climbed dangerously. Warning sirens filled the underground complex. A scientist shouted over the noise. "The reactor is overheating." "How long?" Celine demanded. 17 minutes. She clenched her fists. Outside, humanity was dying. If Helios failed, Earth and Mars could fall within the hour. But if it succeeded, the consequences could scar the galaxy forever. Meanwhile, aboard the Nightfall, Admiral Kane received devastating reports every minute. Sector 3 collapsed. "We lost the Valiant Dawn." Enemy boarding parties detected. A violent explosion shook the bridge. Smoke filled the air as emergency systems activated. Still Kane stood calmly, because he had already accepted something long ago. Victory always demanded sacrifice. Then suddenly, a transmission request appeared. "Source, the Citadel." Kane narrowed his eyes. "Put it through." Chancellor Vaylor appeared on screen. Older now, tired, but still proud. Around him, explosions echoed through the Citadel chamber. Even the Council's greatest fortress was under attack. Vaylor stared directly at Kane. "You've doomed the galaxy." Kane answered coldly. "No, you did that the day you abandoned humanity." Vaylor's voice hardened. "If humans survive this war, every species will fear you forever." Kane stepped closer to the screen. "Good." The Chancellor looked shaken by the answer. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Vaylor asked quietly, "What happened to your people?" Kane's expression darkened. "You taught us survival without mercy." The transmission ended abruptly. Moments later, alarms erupted across every Council frequency. Human infiltration teams had breached the Citadel itself. Explosions tore through its outer rings. Fire spread across docking sectors. Panic consumed the station as human soldiers fought room by room toward the Central Command Core. For the first time in history, the Citadel was falling. And beneath Mars, Helios reached 99% activation. The Citadel was dying. Massive fires consumed entire sectors of the ancient station, while shattered debris drifted through space around it like broken memories. Emergency alarms echoed endlessly through its halls as civilians and soldiers fled in panic. For centuries, the Citadel had ruled the galaxy through fear and authority. Now humanity stood inside its heart. Black-armored human soldiers pushed through the final defensive corridors with brutal determination. Every step shook the station as explosions thundered across distant sectors. And above Mars, the final battle still raged. Thousands of ships burned across the darkness of space. The stars themselves seemed hidden behind endless fire and wreckage. Human fleets were heavily damaged, but the Council Armada was collapsing faster, because fear had finally changed sides. The galaxy no longer feared the Council. It feared humanity. Deep beneath Mars, Dr. Celine Ward stared at the Helios core as warning lights flooded the chamber red. "Activation sequence complete," the system announced. The giant machine awakened fully. Energy surged through massive rotating rings, while the reactor screamed under impossible pressure. Every monitor displayed the same horrifying projection. Solar cascade ready. One command. That was all it would take. One command, and the nearest star could become a weapon powerful enough to erase entire civilizations. Celine felt cold. This was no longer survival. This was extinction-level power. Her communicator activated suddenly. Admiral Kane appeared through static. Behind him, gunfire echoed across the Citadel. "It's ready?" he asked. Celine nodded slowly. "Yes." For a moment, neither spoke. 40 years earlier, humanity had begged the galaxy for understanding. Now they held a weapon capable of forcing obedience through terror. Kane looked exhausted for the first time in years. "Transmit the warning," he ordered quietly. Minutes later, every screen across the galaxy activated simultaneously. Humanity's message spread to every world, every station, every surviving fleet. Admiral Elias Kane stood before the camera, surrounded by flames inside the collapsing citadel. His face carried grief, more than anger now. The Council feared humanity because we were unpredictable, he said. They isolated us, starved us, hunted us. Behind him, broken Council banners burned. And in doing so, he paused. They created something far worse than the humans they feared. Then the image changed. The Helios weapon appeared on screen, for the entire galaxy to witness. Panic spread instantly. Scientists across hundreds of worlds recognized what they were seeing. A star killer. Kane's voice returned. This weapon can erase entire systems. Silence consumed the galaxy. Even the war itself seemed to pause. Then Kane spoke one final time. We did not build this because humanity desired conquest. His eyes hardened. We built it because the galaxy taught us mercy was weakness. Inside the Citadel command chamber, Chancellor Vaylor watched the broadcast in horror. Everything had collapsed. The fleets, the Council, the illusion of control. And suddenly he understood the true scale of his mistake. Humanity had never been dangerous because of power. Humans became dangerous when stripped of hope. Vaylor lowered his head slowly. All fleets, he whispered weakly. The officers looked at him in shock. Chancellor. He closed his eyes. Stand down. Across the galaxy, stunned commanders received the same impossible order. The war was over. Not because the Council won. Not because humanity surrendered. But because everyone finally realized there would be no galaxy left if the fighting continued. Hours later, the surviving fleets drifted silently among the wreckage of Sol. No victory celebrations came. No cheers. Only silence. Humanity had survived, but survival had changed them forever. As Admiral Kane stood alone aboard the ruined citadel, he stared at Earth glowing peacefully in the distance. Beautiful, fragile, human, and for the first time in decades, tears filled his eyes. Because humanity had won the war, but lost the innocence that once made them worthy of the stars. Far across the galaxy, future generations would remember this conflict by one name, the greatest mistake the galaxy ever made.